Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Legendary Knight deck profile. So I'm really excited this week guys, because you guys have been requesting this one a lot recently down in the comments, and this deck is an amazing deck that summons out the Legendary Knight versions of Timaeus, Critias, and Heremos, which is really amazing. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in every single video, getting a signed card sent in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing a single copy of the Legendary Knight Timaeus. This card is a really awesome card that has the ability, cannot be normal summoned or set, it must be special summoned with Legend of Heart. And when this card is special summoned, you can target a face-up spell or trap card on the field and banish that target. And when this card is targeted for an attack, you can target a spell card in your graveyard and set that target. We then play a single copy of Legendary Knight Critias. Legendary Knight Critias cannot be normal summoned or set, it must be special summoned with Legend of Heart. And when this card is special summoned, you can target a face-up spell or trap on the field and banish that target. And when this card is targeted for an attack, you can target a trap card in the graveyard and set that target. And it can be activated this turn, which is really awesome. We then play a single copy of Legendary Knight Heremos. Legendary Knight Heremos has a really good effect that when this card is special summoned, you can target a face-up spell or trap on the field and banish that target. And once per turn, when this card is targeted for an attack, you can target an effect monster in the graveyard until the end phase of the next turn. This card's name becomes that target's original name, and you replace this card's effect with that monster's effect, which is really awesome. And this card also has to be summoned with Legend of Heart. We then play 3 copies of Raiden, Hand of the Lightsworn. Raiden is a really good 3-up because Legend of Heart requires a warrior monster, so this card is really good because it's a warrior and a tuner monster that has the ability that during the main phase, you can send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard, and if a Lightsworn monster is sent to the graveyard, you increase this card's attack by 200 until the end of the opponent's turn, and you're going to use the effect of this card once per turn, and then during the end phase, you send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard, which is really good because what we're trying to do in this deck is mill out the copies of the Legendary Dragon so that we can use Legend of Heart to summon out the Legendary Knight, which is really cool. We then play 3 copies of Wolf the Lightsworn Beast. This card is really good because if it's milled from the deck, you can special summon this card from the graveyard, which helps us out a lot to make rank 4s and even go into some synchro plays in this deck with our copies of Raiden. We then play 2 copies of Lumina the Lightsworn Summoner. Lumina is pretty good in the deck because she has the ability that you can discard a card and then target a level 4 lower Lightsworn monster in your graveyard and special summon that target. And then during the end phase, you send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. We then play 2 copies of Destiny Hero Malicious. Destiny Hero Malicious is a good 2-up because it has the ability that you banish a malicious from the graveyard and then special summon 1 from the deck, which is a good effect to be able to get a warrior on the field. And to combo with that copy of Malicious, we're playing a single copy of Plague Spreader Zombie, because if this card's in the graveyard, you can place a card from your hand on top of the deck and then special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field, which can help out a lot to put one of your Legendary Dragons on top of the deck and then special summon this card and then use the effect of Raiden to be able to mill it to the graveyard, which is pretty good. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Reinforcements of the Army, because we play so many warrior monsters in the deck to be able to get our copies of Raiden, which is just really good. We then play 3 copies of Charge of the Light Brigade. We send the top 3 cards of our deck to the graveyard, and then we add a level 4 lower Lightsworn monster from our deck to our hand, which is usually going to be our copy of Raiden. We then play 3 copies of Solar Recharge. Solar Recharge is really good because it lets us discard a Lightsworn monster, draw 2, and then send the top 2 cards of our deck to the graveyard, which helps us dig through the deck while also setting up the graveyard for Legend of Heart. We then play 2 copies of Timaeus and 3 copies of Critias. Critias is really good because we actually play a trap card in the deck that we can actually make a Critias fusion in the deck, so Critias is really good. Timaeus, we don't play Dark Magician in this build, so you don't have a way to actually summon any fusion monsters from the extra deck off its effect, which is why I'm just playing 2 copies of it. We then play 2 copies of Heremos. Heremos is pretty good in the deck because we actually do play a single target in the extra deck to make with Heremos, which is really good in this particular build because it has the ability to just send from your hand or your side of the field field, one basically monster, to be able to summon out a monster from the extra deck that meets its summoning requirements, which is really good. We then play 3 copies of Legend of Heart, which the entire deck is based around. This card is really awesome because it has the ability to pay 2,000 life points, tribute a warrior monster, and then you banish up to 3 legendary dragon spells with different names from your hand or graveyard, and if you do, you get to special summon that many legendary knight monsters with different names from your hand, deck, or graveyard, and you can only use one of this card per turn. This card is really, really good because what you're trying to do in this deck is get your 3 legendary dragons in the graveyard and then resolve this card to special summon out all 3 of the legendary knights, and then summon out Timaeus, the Knight of Destiny, which is an awesome boss monster. We then play 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. Foolish Burial Goods is a good card in this deck because it's actually going to send our copies of Hermos, Timaeus, and our copies of Critias to the graveyard to just set up the grave for Legend of Heart. We then play 3 copies of Magical Stone Excavation, which is the last spell that we're playing in the deck. You discard any 2 cards, and then you pick a spell in the graveyard and add it back to your hand. So this card comes in very handy if you mill out the copy of Legend of Heart and you need to get it back, which is always a great thing to be able to grab it back with this card, because you can also discard your legendary dragons to be able to get it back, which is a really, really good effect. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps in the deck, we're going to be playing one of the most nostalgic traps in the entire game, and that's going to be 3 copies of Mirror Force. Mirror Force is really awesome because you're going to be using this card to go in for Mirror Force Dragon, but it's really good to actually draw this card outside of just going in for Mirror Force Dragon because it adds a little bit of protection to our cards, because it has the ability that when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you destroy all attack position monsters that your opponent controls, which is a really awesome effect. This is actually one of my favorite cards in the game just because of how nostalgic it is. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Timaeus, the Knight of Destiny. You're usually only ever going to summon 1 copy of this card, but I like to play 2 copies just for the chance of summoning the second one. But this card requires a legendary knight, Timaeus, Critias, and Hermos to be used to fusion summon this card, and it must be special summoned from your extra deck by sending the above cards you control to the graveyard, and you don't use polymerization, and it's unaffected by other card effects. And then once per battle, if this card battles during damage calculation quick effect, you can make this card's attack and defense become equal to the attack of the monster on the field with the highest attack, your choice if tied. And when this card is destroyed by battle, you can special summon legendary knight monsters from your hand, deck, or graveyard, ignoring their summoning conditions. You can summon back all 3 of them, which is really, really cool because it gives you 3 2,800 attack point monsters if this card gets destroyed by battle, which is really good. We then play a single copy of Mirror Force Dragon, because Mirror Force Dragon is, in my opinion, the best Critias fusion and just a really awesome card because it has the ability it must be special summoned with the Fang of Critias using a Mirror Force and cannot be special summoned by other ways. And when a monster you control is targeted for an attack or by an opponent's card effect, except during the damage step, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls, which is really cool. We then play a single copy of Rocket Hermos Cannon. Rocket Hermos Cannon is a really good card in this deck because it combos very well with all the warriors that we're playing, and it has the ability that must be special summoned with the Claw of Hermos using warrior monsters and cannot be special summoned by other ways. And if this card is special summoned, you can target a face-up monster on the field and equip this card to it, and it can make a second attack during the battle phase, and also it inflicts piercing damage, which is pretty good. This card basically summons itself as an equip card, which is kind of neat to give that monster that bonus of being able to attack twice, and it also can do piercing damage, which is just such a good effect. We then play 2 copies of Chaos Ruler, the Chasmatic Magical Dragon. This card is a really good 2-up because it helps us mill through the deck, because if this card is synchro summoned, you can excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, and if you do, you get to add a light or a dark monster to your hand from among those cards, which is pretty good because it helps us get through the deck a little bit further to be able to get our legendary dragons in the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Beals because it's a really good defensive card in the deck that you can actually summon off of play Plague Spreader, and Malicious. So this card is a really good card because it can't be destroyed by battle or by card effects. And when you take damage from attacks involving this card or from an opponent's card effect, this card gains attack equal to the damage you took, which is a pretty good effect. We then play a single copy of Michael the Arc Light Swarm because this card is just a good synchro monster in the deck that you can pay 1,000 life points, target a card on the field, and banish it. And when this card is destroyed, you can target any number of other Light Swarm monsters in your graveyard and shuffle them into the deck. And if you do, you gain 300 life points for each card return, and then during each end phase, you send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard, which is pretty good because it helps us mill through the deck. We then play a single copy of number 97. Number 97 is really good because you can detach a material from this card and then summon out either a copy of number 38 or number 100, attaching the other as a material to be able to either negate spell effects or summon out a 9,000 attack point monster, which is really awesome to go in for an OTK. We then play a single copy of the Zombie Vampire. Zombie Vampire is good because this card has the ability that if you use a monster that was owned by the opponent, you can treat it as a level 8, and neither player can target this card with card effects of monsters special summon except monsters that were summoned from the graveyard. And you can also detach a material from this card, and each player sends the top 4 cards of their deck to the graveyard, and then if any monsters were sent to the graveyard by this card's effect, you can special summon one of those monsters to your field, which is a really good effect to be able to basically mill 4 more cards off the deck while also getting a special summon is just really good. We then play a single copy of Dingirsu because it can send a card to the graveyard when it's XZ summoned, which is pretty good. 1 copy of number 60 because it can let you draw 2, discard 1, or draw 2, discard a card, special summon a monster in the graveyard, or double the attack of a monster. And then finally, a single copy of Zeus because Zeus can board wipe the field, which is really good. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really awesome deck to be able to play with. Super nostalgic to the Legendary Knights, and just a really cool card because I loved the Waking the Dragons arc in Yu-Gi-Oh! As you guys probably know, because I use the Seal of Orichalcos all the time for my playmat that I do deck profiles on, but it's just such an awesome arc in the series, and it's just a really cool deck. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can come part of our notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.